Hello, and welcome back to the Breadwinner Podcast. I'm your host, Caroline, and as always, we get to come here and chat about all things sourdough microbakery business. This is where we're all about building businesses that support our life, that actually make money, and that do not burn us out. This episode is part two of a two-part series that I started last week, reflecting on my first year of business and then looking at what has changed and what hasn't. If you haven't already, go back and listen to last week's episode 82, where I get really nitty gritty in year one. I share a lot of numbers, I share what worked and what didn't, and just really broke down some of the strategies that served me, some of the things I learned, and what I left behind. So, in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit less about specific numbers and more about strategies that worked and didn't work, shifts internally that I have experienced here in my second year and what that looks like. And then if you're in the beginning and not into your second year yet, maybe some of the things that you can anticipate or expect to experience as you enter year two in your business. So I'll sum those up at the end of the episode. When I shared that I was preparing for this series, I had a listener send me a message and ask me specifically for the progression of my growth, if I ever felt like I hit a wall, weeks when I maybe doubted myself more than others, any specifically overwhelming times, strategies I used to gain momentum. And I took that feedback, that request, and built a lot of those answers into this episode. And so I'm excited to talk about that and hopefully give you an idea of some of the ways that you can build your business. And even if you are even beyond year two, you're even ahead of me, I'm sure that there will be wisdom and insights that you glean from this episode that you can take to help you build a business that serves you better. So to be clear, I am still in year two. I will begin year three in September. I started my business in September of 2023. And so I am on the downhill slope of year two here, but I am still in year two. So as we look back on my complete year one, and now I am entering my second summer. So I have a summer under my belt. I have at least one of every season under my belt now to look back on. But this past year has already really it's been marked by sharper clarity, stronger systems, and fewer decisions just made out of scramble or panic or guessing. So we're going to talk about what's changed, how I shifted into a more strategic mindset this season has really looked like inside my business and my life. As I thought about this, I think the very biggest shift in year two has been more internal. Year one, especially towards the end of year one, was really about dialing in my systems. I invested in better equipment. I moved here into my dining room and out of my home kitchen to give myself a little bit more space and a little bit more separation from home life and work. And then year two has been really about no longer treating this as a project just to see where it goes, but really seeing it as a business that I'm sticking with and showing up like I'm building a business that is here to last. I was thinking back and there was a really pivotal moment for me in January of this year. So just a few months ago, I was on a call with my business coach and she said, "You're the CEO and visionary," talking about my role in the business. She wasn't saying that to hype me up or to encourage me to own a role that I was stepping into, but she was observing what was already true. And that fact for me clicked. I realized up until that point, that title of CEO kind of felt like playing dress up a little bit. Felt like a kid putting on her mom's high heels and pretending to be something that I wasn't. But I realized actually, no, I am the CEO of this business. I am the visionary. I am steering the ship. I'm fully responsible for where this business heads. And that didn't feel scary so much anymore. It didn't feel faking it so much as it really, I began to step into owning that role, showing up as the expert. And so what that looked like was beginning to ask better questions, take much more ownership over every aspect of my business. Specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but specifically owning my numbers. I stopped making reactive decisions so much. Now, this isn't a one and done thing. I we'll touch on this a little bit more in a minute. I haven't just figured everything out. Like, I haven't hit year 2 and have no more struggles. I threw away a batch of 3 pans of bread muffins last week, but I just took more ownership and gave myself permission to pause when things felt heavy rather than pushing harder. And here's one thing that I've noticed in year 2 that has actually been really helpful, really insightful. I have observed, and this will click much more with my female listeners than my male listeners. So if you're male, just maybe apply this to the females in your life so you can understand them a little better. But I noticed this pattern about once a month. I consider burning it all down. I have a day where I'm like, is this even worth it? Why am I doing this? I don't like any of this. I'm just going to burn it all down, quit, and go work for someone else. Question everything. I fantasize about quitting, and then I check the calendar and I realize it's day 27 or 28 of my cycle. I'm fine. I don't need to burn everything down. I just need sleep. Honestly, that's been revolutionary for me to realize that it's a hormonal cycle that is responsible for that just a little bit of a ebb and flow, and realizing that, recognizing it, laughing at it now rather than freaking out, and giving myself grace. And a day or 2 later, I feel a lot better. 2 weeks later, I'm back in conquer the world mode and I am on fire and getting all the things done. And I'm learning, I will not say I have figured it all out, but I am learning how to utilize the energy ebbs and flows of my natural cycle to serve me better, to group really productive tasks in certain stages of the month and more of the reflective tasks in other areas. And so recognizing those patterns has really helped me begin to ride the wave instead of just getting crushed by it. Those were the internal shifts that I really identified as taking place in year 2. And looking more at the kind of systems and operational shifts, in year 1, I really was doing a little bit of everything every day. I didn't have a super solid rhythm yet of what I did on each day. Now, I did prep the dough before dough day, but I maybe mixed up a batch of cookies on Monday and a batch of scones on Tuesday. And it was very scattered. In year 2, especially in the last few months, I have built a really structured weekly rhythm that is serving me so much better. So this is specific for me because I have the 2 separate streams of revenue. I have this podcast side of my business and, of course, the bakery side. But what I've found is separating those. Mondays are now for coaching. I coach my clients and I receive my own coaching. Tuesdays are for podcast content. So it's a Tuesday. Typing up my outlines of my episodes. I am recording some episodes. I'm batch producing those. And then Wednesday and Thursday are dough prep, bake day. And then opposite Fridays, when I have a market, is a bake day. And the other Fridays are a CEO day. So I do things that move the needle in my business. And sometimes I go get a pedicure. Sometimes I run the errands that I've been putting off. But blocking things out like that has been really helpful. This I could see working well also if you are maybe a homeschool mom and you are struggling with having a little bit of everything in every single day. Perhaps if you block out one really solid day for the unit study in your schooling, or a solid day for business, for dough prep, where the kids have a little bit of a less stringent schedule, whatever serves you well. Thinking about ways that you can maybe compartmentalize what you're doing and group like tasks together so that you have a lot more structure and can plan ahead and just allow your brain to not be scrambling with your schedule as much. That may create a lot more space and a much more sustainable rhythm in your lifestyle. For me, it's given me so much more clarity and peace, and just the knowing that, for example, on Mondays, I'm typing up emails and I'm coaching, and I do those on Mondays. And so I am not thinking on Thursday about the email I need to write. I know that will take place on Monday. And so the mental load has eased somewhat, and that's been really helpful. It's helpful also to not be juggling scone prep in between coaching calls or recording a podcast between bakes, which I have done before and probably will do a handful of times in the future. But for the most part, they are blocked out in a really helpful way. Some other systems that I've introduced in year 2 are creating a recipe index spreadsheet. This has been huge. For the first year or so, I had a binder with all my recipes, and I would open it up every single time I needed to prepare a recipe and do all my math to multiply it for as many batches as I needed. And finally, I realized there has to be a better way. And so I used a Google Sheet and just created a recipe index. And now I put all of my recipes in there, and I have it set up to do the math. If I'm doing a 20 times recipe like I did of my muffins last week, I just type in the number 20 and it multiplies everything by 20, and I can make sure that I have the ingredients in hand. I have my starter fed accordingly beforehand. It has made such a difference in my flow. That recipe index is available if that's something that you want to grab, and I'll put that down in the show notes below. Another big thing that I've gotten a lot better at is pre-measuring my ingredients ahead of time. When I prepare my dry ingredients before dough day flows so much better. I don't have gaps in between batches where I am trying to measure, and everything goes so much more smoothly. So if you have not begun pre-measuring your ingredients ahead of time, just add all your flour into a bin, label it, and you're good to go for the next day. It makes such a difference. Another thing that I've changed or paid more attention to and gotten more intentional about is my packaging. I have simplified my packaging. Before, I didn't necessarily put a huge amount of thought into the different types of packaging that I was using. The shift that I have made is, how can I simplify this and use the same packaging for multiple products so that I'm only ordering a handful of different sizes and varieties? And so now I use the same large bags for my mini loaves, my English muffins, my dozen cookies. And I use the same boxes for muffins and scones and variety boxes and things like that. And I use the same small boxes for my scones, single cinnamon rolls, cookies. That way I'm not trying to store multiple sizes of packaging, and I'm not trying to keep track of all the different ones that I have to order. I just know I have a limited list of the different packages that I have realized that work really well. I know what to reorder. And the only time I have to go in and look for something new is when something goes out of stock. That's been a really helpful shift. I'll put a link down below also of my go-to packaging, so you can kind of skip some of the learning curve there too if you're not sure and want to just order what I found that works. Another big shift was bringing on an assistant for a few months. I am doing it all solo right now, but for a few months I had an assistant coming in for about 10 hours a week. And what that did was help me free up time I got to do more of the prep, and she did a lot more of the dishes, the labeling, the packaging, shaping cookie dough balls, prepping inclusions like shredding butter and cheese. Those few hours made a really huge difference, and it won't be long before I hire an assistant again, because that really was extremely helpful. And even just in terms of taking ownership of my role as a leader in the business and noticing things like how I could make my systems more effective as I brought someone else in. That was a really helpful experience, and also just had a really sweet friendship with someone who we could chat with during dough day, because this work gets lonely sometimes. So that was a really big shift that I made in year 2. And then one really high impact shift that I made at the beginning of 2025, starting in January, was I stopped doing a porch pickup every single week. Up until that point, I had been doing a porch pickup every single Thursday. And then I have my bi-weekly market every second and fourth Saturday. And those weeks where I had the porch pickup on Thursday and also the market on Saturday were insanity. Trying to prep for the market, get that dough going on Thursday, while also baking, packaging, getting my porch pickup out on Thursday. It was just chaotic, and it also wasn't leaving me enough time and bandwidth to fully prep as much product as I wanted to be able to bring to the markets. So the shift that I made was to drop those porch pickups and instead just alternate porch pickups on opposite Thursdays from the market. So I went down to just a total of 4 bake days a month. Interestingly, I wasn't totally sure what to expect, but I did not see a hit to my revenue. I was able to go from markets where my gross sales were between $1,000 to $1,200 to markets where my gross sales are now between $1,800 to $2,000 because I had the time to prep more thoroughly and bring more product, a better variety to my market tables because I wasn't also trying to juggle my Thursday porch pickup. That was a really helpful shift. So if you feel like you're doing a little bit too much, maybe think about ways where you can scale back to become more efficient in other ways and maybe ultimately scale up in a way that serves you better. Moving on to look at my marketing strategy. So my marketing strategy really got simpler. It became more consistent, but more focused and more sustainable. I did a lot less. I guess in year one, I was a little more scattered. I was trying a lot, but I was establishing myself. So it was important in that season. I was showing up a lot on social media, especially in local Facebook groups. And in year two, I have built enough of a customer base that my primary marketing channel really is just my text list. So I send a non-negotiable text every single Sunday at 3:30 p.m. with my pre-order menu. It happens every week. People know to expect it. It's extremely consistent, the most consistent thing that I do in terms of marketing. And aside from that, my marketing really has just been paying attention at markets to what people are asking for, letting word of mouth do a lot of the heavy lifting. So if I am showing up consistently, excellently, and treating my people really well, they're going to tell their friends about me. And that has been a really great way that I have grown. And then I just rotate my menu based on requests that I hear from my customers. If they ask for me to bring something back, I put that on my radar and then bring that back pretty soon, especially if I'm hearing that request more than once. And I'm leaning into their favorites. So English muffins are a big one. They've been loving the pizza crusts. And so as much as my capacity allows, I'm bringing more and more of what they're asking for. And that's been working really well. So it's not anymore about doing more social media posts, more content, but just doing what works really well and doing that consistently. So I serve the customers I have, and that brings in new customers naturally. This will shift when I enter outreach mode, when I grow into my bakery brick and mortar space. That will mean a lot more of a local presence, exploring things like the Nextdoor app, joining the Chamber of Commerce, showing up more in those local Facebook groups again so that people know that I have moved into a new space and where to find me, what my hours are, and encouraging them to share their friends and come visit me. Then I was thinking about the things that haven't changed from year one to year two. Year one, I really honed in a lot of my systems, my equipment, things like that. And so a lot of those systems have remained more or less unchanged, my recipes. But then a lot of my priorities really are what have remained really consistent. We still sit down for dinner at the dinner table as a family every single night that my husband's home. And when he's not, the kids and I sit down. But no matter how busy I am, even if I have dough bench resting on the table here, I still go and sit down with the family. And that is a non-negotiable. I still feed my starter consistently, giving it high ratio feeds to keep it super balanced and happy. That has been a really high priority because it plays into my consistent product, which is the backbone. I prioritize quality sleep. I've talked about this before. I really need a minimum of about 5 nights a week with 8 hours of sleep. Any less than that, and I really start to feel like I'm dragged. Naturally, I have at least one night a week that's a really short night, and I'm starting my workday around 3 in the morning. So I try to go to bed a little early on those nights. But other than that, I prioritize quality sleep, in bed early enough with the blackout curtains, light turned down, phone off early, just to make sure that I am resting and restoring, especially after the night or two that are short nights. Another thing that hasn't changed is I hired my business coach in June of 2024, and I have been consistently working with her now for about a year. And that has been really pivotal in the growth of my business, both on the baker side and the podcast side, very much on the podcast side. I know that I would not have followed through with all that I have if I didn't have the investment in the coach to keep me accountable, keep me unstuck, and keep me foreseeing the challenges that I might encounter and a step ahead of them or strategizing when I do encounter challenges. And then, of course, unchanged is just my customers and the way that I serve them. I love hearing them say things like, your bread is the only bread that I can eat. It just doesn't get old. And that keeps me going. It kept me going in the beginning and it keeps me going now. And it will keep me motivated and doing good work that I believe in for a long time. So I was reflecting, thinking about what does year two feel like now? As I am moving toward the end of my second year into my third year, year two feels a lot clearer. It's not necessarily easier. I don't have it all figured out, but it's a lot more intentional, a lot more clear. I don't feel like I've arrived. Certainly, most entrepreneurs will tell you that the first 2 or 3 years are really just figuring it all out as you go. And they don't feel like they generally hit their stride until year three or year four or beyond. And so I will say that I'm learning so much. This has been a really growing season, which I have loved. And I know that I am only just beginning, especially with a brick and mortar on the horizon. I know year three is going to stretch me even more, and I'll continue to share what that growth looks like, what I'm learning, and how that applies to my business and to yours. But I do just overall feel a lot more grounded. I feel really confident in what I say yes and no to. I feel more clear on my role in my business, but really in the role that my business plays in the community. So I mentioned this at the very beginning, but I think when I first began in year one, it was this mindset of like, where could this go? I need this to make money, but without the long-term vision, I don't think I really saw it as something that I would stick with for the long term. Not in a non-committal way, but just in a, I have no idea what the future of this is way. And also I had never had something be successful like that for the long term. And so I just maybe didn't even know what the possibilities were. And as I have experienced a lot of success and a lot of great feedback from the community and repeat customers continually returning and wanting more and valuing good food, it has underscored the role that I play in the community and the importance of bringing locally produced food and being one of those food producers. It is something that our community does not have enough of. And I am beginning to see that the way that I wanted to serve the community felt very obscure, and now it's beginning to become much more concrete. It'll be exciting to see as the year progresses, as I go into year three and open the brick and mortar and begin to step even more fully into my role in the community, how that changes and how it evolves and becomes even more clear and concrete as I get to rub shoulders with people in an even deeper way. So the clarity that I have, I know that it's come from not overthinking, but rather just taking action. This has really been a year of not getting in my own way. I still overthink things sometimes, but it has really been a year of just doing the thing, just taking action, even if it's imperfect, even if I could spend more time to have it more fully fleshed out and ready, but paying attention, simplifying where I could, and just doing the work. So to wrap it all up, if you're heading into year two, or you're just getting started, or maybe you're in year two and feeling a little stuck, or just want to learn from someone in a similar season, here's what I maybe wish someone would have told me before I entered my second year. Number one, as you move out of the kind of uncertainty and trying all the things in year one, that experimenting starts to feel chaotic. And so in year two, you'll crave more structure. So this is when you create simple rhythms that you can repeat every week. You simplify so that you can begin to scale up. Number two, you'll realize that clarity beats hustle. So year one was a lot of trying all the things and maybe needing a perfect plan, just really working hard, doing all of the opportunities. I realize I don't need a perfect plan, but I do need momentum. And that just comes from imperfect, consistent action. That imperfect, consistent action keeps me moving. And so the mantra or the idea that done is better than perfect is something that I keep coming back to. While I still have a very high standard, I realize that if I'm waiting for perfection, I will just keep waiting and never actually take action. Number three, you'll need to get really clear on your numbers. This is something that I have really leaned into in the last 3 or 4 months, is really taking ownership of my numbers. I will say that I've always been someone who numbers don't click super easily for me. As a student, I always said that I hated math. As I grow, I realize I can build systems and I can take ownership and understand my numbers, even if they're not natural. And as a business owner, that is a responsibility that I have. Fuzzy, obscure numbers don't scale. And so for me, this looked like building some spreadsheets, getting really clear on how much my products cost to make, making sure that my pricing was clear and strategic and effective, understanding my margins and how to pay myself, making sure that I wasn't just willy nilly, okay, here's the money that's left over. I'll go to Target. You can't manage what you don't measure. And especially if you see your business scaling to a larger level, whether that's going commercial, opening a brick and mortar, or even just sustaining what you have, part of being a business owner, a CEO, stepping into that role of owning your business is owning your numbers and getting really clear. Part of that process for me has been building a system that I can share with you, because I know that I'm not the only one who has felt really fuzzy about their numbers and felt like you wanted to understand them better, but didn't really know where to start. QuickBooks is overwhelming. Spreadsheets are overwhelming. I have finally created a tool that I feel like is exactly what I've needed and exactly what I've been wanting to share with you. And it's honestly a game changer. So I've talked a little bit about my new profit and pricing calculator. It's a tool that lets you plug in all of your ingredient costs, and it will calculate the cost of your products. So you make sure that the amount that you have to pay in ingredients lines up with the amount that you're charging, so that you are charging enough to be able to pay yourself. And then the next level of that, I just added an additional feature to the spreadsheet, which I am beyond excited about. But what it allows you to do is plug in your whatever you're going to be baking, if it's 16 loaves of bread and 20 focaccia and 30 cookies, whatever it is. It pulls from your recipe index where you identified all your costs, and it shows you how much you'll earn in owner's pay and how much you need to save for overhead, for taxes, for savings. So if you want to make $1,000 to pay yourself $1,000, you can play around with the quantities that you need to sell to get that number in owner's pay to hit $1,000, so you know exactly what you need to make in that month. It's going to take the guesswork out, take the mystery out, and make it so much more clear. Anyway, that's going to be down in the show notes too. Moving on, number 4, in year 2, you'll start to raise your standards or get really clear on what you stand for. So in year 2 is when I made the commitment to switch to 100% organic flour. And so I had previously been using some organic, some not. And I just decided that is a line that I am going to draw for my business and say, yes, all of my flour is organic. You may make a decision like that. I started staying ahead on my inventory and knowing when I needed to order so that I wasn't reactively ordering when I was starting to run out. Every once in a while, that still catches me by surprise, but I've gotten a lot better. And also prioritizing my own wellness. I still have a lot of room to grow in this area, but I carve out about 30 minutes in the sauna every 3 to 4 days a week. And that makes a big difference in my energy level and just my overall wellness. So you run better when you feel better. Prioritizing your health is something that I will talk about till the cows come home. We need to take care of ourselves if we're going to build a business that doesn't burn us out. And then the last thing that you probably will begin to experience, if you have not already, is the need for community. This business can be so lonely. We spend so much of the day just doing our thing all by ourselves, preparing all this bread, and then we share it with the customers and we go and rinse and repeat. So I find that I crave connection with other business owners. For me, it's specifically women who are doing something similar. In my current season, I am craving connection with women who are further down the path that I am. I want to be mentored by someone who has scaled a business. And so I'm not looking for a step-by-step blueprint, but for perspective and for wisdom from people who have experienced more or different or had success and failure that I can learn from. There is just something about hearing how someone else has navigated a hard season or how they made a key decision. And it makes it feel less heavy, but also sometimes we just can't see the forest for the trees, or we don't know what we don't know. And until we can connect with other people who can lift us up and share what they did in the similar season, we can just be so stuck. So that is part of why I created the Breadwinner Network, which I've talked a little bit about before. We are not meant to do business alone. We are meant to be in community. And the Breadwinner Network is a group of sourdough business owners who get it, who are experiencing the same seasonal ebbs and flows and challenges, are committed to building something sustainable and profitable and grounded in real life. So it's like a Facebook group without the algorithm. There's a feed where you can ask questions, answer, connect, and grow together. I share private podcast episodes occasionally. We have a monthly Q&A. There is a structure and a path to help you move forward and identify where you are in your timeline of bakery ownership and know what are the next milestones to be looking for. And then in each quarter, we're going to come together for a business reset workshop, recalibrate, and make sure that we're on track and preparing well for the next quarter. So if you're craving support, if you're craving collaboration, you just want someone to bounce ideas off, or you don't want to feel so alone, the Breadwinner Network is open for you. If you want to take it a step deeper and have even more hands-on attention from me, follow even more structure with curriculum and a more intimate setting, the Breadwinner Inner Circle is my 12-week coaching program, and that cohort is reopening in June. So that is limited to only 30 people. It's going to fill it pretty fast. So there's going to be a link down below for the wait list for the Inner Circle as well. If you want to add your name to the wait list, you'll get an email when it opens and be ready to jump in and sign up if that feels like the right fit for you to just build your business on an even deeper, more intentional level. Bottom line is get around other bakers who think like you, who are learning what you're learning, and keep growing together. Year 2 has been a really cool, exciting one for me. I'm so excited as this year winds down and we move on into even more lessons and stretching and growing and just really cool experiences in year 3. And I will keep bringing you along with that. If this episode helps you feel more grounded, maybe know what to expect, maybe inspired you, go ahead and share it with another baker who maybe needs the same encouragement or inspiration. Or tag me on Instagram if you listened and you heard something that you resonated with. I would love to hear that. If you had a question or you want me to go deeper on something specific in a future episode, send me a message on Instagram or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube, because I would love that feedback. I love hearing listener requests for future episodes or specific questions that I can consider how to answer from my experience, or maybe I bring another expert on who can share specifically on a topic. But I want to continually be bringing specific topics that you want to learn. So thank you for spending some time with me. If you missed part 1, go on back and give it a listen. It, like I said, is packed with the really specific numbers of my first year in business, really tactical lessons, and some honest reflections. I will be back very soon, next Thursday, with another episode. But until then, happy baking.